Hey guys, today we're diving into another truly horrifying case. If you want to support my channel, make sure to subscribe and stay active. It really helps me out. I'd be super grateful for that. Let's get started. The morning of June 21st, 2016 was scorching, just like most summer days in Riverside County, California. A local motorcyclist was riding along a rural road near Lake Matthews when he pulled off the highway and noticed a motionless figure on the shoulder. A man was lying on his back. His face was partially disfigured by a gunshot wound, and his clothes were soaked in blood. When the police arrived, they immediately ruled out an accidental death. The nature of the injuries pointed to a violent crime, several stab wounds, followed by a shot to the head. There were no signs of a struggle on site, nor any indication that the crime had occurred there. Everything suggested the body had been transported and dumped after the crime. Investigators later identified the victim as 28-year-old Justin Hilbert, a resident of Riverside. On the evening of June 20th, he left the home he shared with his partner, Tanya Rep, and never returned. Their son Logan was just 6 months old at the time. Justin had recently finished a technical training program and had just started a new job. His life seemed to be turning around, but it came to an abrupt end. The investigation immediately hit roadblocks. Justin had no known enemies, no debts, and those close to him reported no ongoing conflicts. But soon, a previously unknown name came to light. Tanya Rep was born in California in the mid-1980s. She grew up in a stable, working-class household, became independent early, and from a young age demonstrated responsibility and strong ambition. She worked in logistics and was known for her organizational skills and reliability. In the 2010s, Tanya met Jared Bishoff, a former U.S. Marine. He appeared mature, dependable, and strong. Their relationship progressed quickly, and they married not long after. But their marriage began to crack under pressure. Tension and power struggles between them grew more frequent. As time passed, Jared became increasingly controlling and aggressive. He displayed jealousy, exerted emotional pressure, and eventually resorted to physical force. Tanya wouldn't accept that behavior. She began gathering evidence and preparing to divorce. The process was long and painful. Jared refused to let go, resisted the separation, and tried to maintain influence over her at any cost. Jared Bishoff, born around 1984, served in the U.S. Marine Corps. After leaving the military, he returned to California and struggled to find stable work. He had a determined and persistent character. Outwardly, he seemed calm and dependable. But beneath that facade, there was volatility and a desire for control. He viewed the marriage not simply as a personal relationship, but as his territory, one he would not allow interference in. After the divorce, he couldn't accept that Tanya had moved on. He especially struggled when she began seeing another man. Though he claimed to have come to terms with it verbally, in reality, he continued to interfere. He showed up near her home, monitored her activities, applied pressure, and issued threats. He didn't see his behavior as stalking. In his mind, it was about restoring justice and trying to regain lost control. Justin Hilbert, 28, was born around 1988 and lived in Riverside, California. He was just beginning to build his adult life. After years of side gigs and searching, he enrolled in a technical school, graduated, and landed a full-time job maintaining industrial equipment. Justin was calm, reserved, and avoided conflict. In early 2015, he met Tanya Rep. At the time, she was finalizing the end of a difficult marriage. Their first conversations felt easy and natural. Justin didn't push, didn't rush things, and never made demands. He simply showed up, listening, offering support, and helping when needed. Over time, they grew close. They didn't move in together right away, but began spending more and more time as a couple. With Justin, Tanya felt safe, for the first time in a long time. When Tanya found out she was expecting, Justin didn't pull away or panic. On the contrary, he embraced the situation with calm resolve. He became more involved, helped prepare for the arrival, and by early 2016, they were living together. In January, their son Logan was born. He became the center of their world. From the beginning, Justin stepped into fatherhood, learning how to swaddle, bottle feed, wake up at night, and take Logan out for walks. Though they weren't legally married, to everyone around them, family, friends, co-workers, they were a full-fledged family. His parents welcomed Tanya warmly, and she often spent time at their home. The household was calm and caring. Justin had no connection to Jared and didn't even know him. He had no idea how deeply Jared was reacting to the changes in Tanya's life. All Justin wanted was to build something steady and good. Bailey Sharp, the youngest person involved in this story, was born in the early 1990s in Seattle to a law enforcement family. As a kid, she was full of energy, interested in science and sports, but everything changed in her teens when she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and lupus. Chronic pain and medical restrictions took a toll on her mental health. By 16 or 17, she began using marijuana, then moved on to prescription painkillers, and eventually turned to stronger substances. She went through rehab multiple times. There were moments of recovery, but relapses continued. By 2015, her social ties in Seattle had weakened, her family relationships were strained, and she decided to move to California, hoping for a fresh start. There, she didn't have stable housing or a job. She occasionally stayed with acquaintances, hung out in bars, and spent time in low-budget places. It was at one of these spots that she met Jared Bishoff, Tanya's ex-husband. He became a figure of dominance and control in her life. For Jared, it wasn't about romance. It was about manipulating her vulnerability and dependency for his own purposes. On June 20th, 2016, the day in Riverside started out like any other. Justin Hilbert spent the day with Tanya and their son Logan, who had just turned 6 months old. Justin talked about his early shifts at the new job, and the couple discussed their weekly plans. What to buy, what errands to run. Everything felt peaceful. In the afternoon, Tanya brought up a strange conversation she'd had the night before. A woman named Bailey Sharp had messaged her, claiming that Justin was being dishonest, leading a double life, and pretending to be someone he wasn't. Tanya showed Justin the messages. He read them carefully and immediately said they weren't true. He was calm, but firm. He guessed that someone was intentionally trying to drive a wedge between them. Justin promised to find out who was behind the messages. He didn't blame Tanya for doubting and reassured her that he loved her and had nothing to hide. Around 9 p.m., Justin said he needed to step out for a bit. He didn't share many details. It wasn't unusual. Sometimes he'd leave briefly to pick up tools, visit a friend, or get some air. He got ready without fuss, kissed Logan, told Tanya he'd be back soon, and walked out with his keys. Nothing about it seemed out of the ordinary, but hours passed, and Justin didn't return. Tanya texted him, then called, but got no answer. By midnight, his phone was off. Worry set in. She stayed up, checking messages, calling again and again, hoping to hear his voice, but there was nothing. Justin had never spent the night away without telling her. Around 8 a.m. on June 21st, Tony received a brief text from Justin's number. Just 2 short phrases. Don't wait. It's over. No greeting, no explanation. The message felt foreign, cold. It wasn't how Justin wrote. She sensed something serious had happened, and immediately texted his mother and called his sister. No one knew where Justin was. It became clear he was missing. That same morning, around the same time, Riverside County authorities got a report. A man on a motorcycle was riding down a rural road near Lake Matthews when he spotted a body on the shoulder. The person was lying face up. Clothing was soaked in blood. There were no signs of a struggle. A later medical examiner's report would reveal death by a gunshot to the head. But there were knife wounds before that. Everything suggested the victim had been attacked elsewhere, then dumped in that spot. Police identified the victim within hours. Justin Hilbert. His disappearance and the earlier message now made horrific sense. After finding the body, investigators began their work immediately. Based on the condition of the remains, the crime likely happened the night before. Once the identity was confirmed, officers went to the home Justin shared with Tony Rep. Tony confirmed he left around 9 p.m. and never returned. The team recorded her statement and collected his belongings. His dark blue sedan was also missing, and promptly entered into the National Missing Vehicle database. Investigators examined Justin's clothes and noted several personal items were missing. He always carried his phone, work badge, and wallet, but none were found. Clearly, someone deliberately tried to erase traces. Still, tiny fabric fibers and microparticles on the body pointed to a different location. Subsequent investigation confirmed the victim had been transported and dumped after death. Talking to Justin's friends and co-workers yielded little. No one knew of any trouble or threats. All described him as calm and non-confrontational. No debts, no lawsuits. There was no obvious motive. The case broke open when investigators looked into Tony's recent messages. One name stood out: Bailey. She'd contacted Tony just before Justin vanished. A record search turned up. Bailey Sharp, registered in San Bernardino County, with no fixed address. A young woman with a criminal history tied to illegal substances. She became the first major lead. Authorities traced her. No official job, no insurance, no lease in her name, no driver's license, no vehicle. The only clue was the number she texted Tony from. A request to the carrier revealed the SIM was registered under someone else's name and used sporadically. The last activity, calls and messages, came from Murrieta, south of Riverside. Police then checked the number's contacts. It frequently connected to a man named Jared Bishoff, Tony's ex-husband. That alone didn't prove collaboration, but it caught investigators' attention. There was no direct evidence Bailey and Jared were working together, but the situation was concerning. A woman with a sketchy background suddenly reaches out to the current partner of Justin, and that same number regularly contacts Tony's ex. Suspicious. They requested mobile device location data. On the night of June 20th to 21st, Bailey's phone pinged in southern Riverside, close to where Justin's body was later found. Simultaneously, they investigated Bailey's associates. Social workers reported seeing her at parking lots and bars with various men, but identities were unknown. So they shifted focus to digital records. A check of the IP address used by Bailey's social media logins revealed the same device, and IP also accessed an account linked to Jared. Within the investigative team, it became increasingly clear there was likely an ongoing connection between Bailey and Jared. But the nature of that connection remained uncertain. Investigators couldn't rule out the possibility that Jared might not have known about the messages sent from Bailey's phone. Everything hinged on evidence. To avoid alerting any potential suspects, the team decided to conduct discreet surveillance and continue gathering intel, starting with confirming their locations and determining whether they were together. At this point, the theory of a crime motivated by personal conflict seemed more and more likely. However, no direct proof had yet surfaced. The central question remained: was Bailey acting on her own, or was someone else involved? Someone investigators hadn't seriously considered. When reviewing messages exchanged between Tony and Bailey, investigators became increasingly convinced the texts were part of a calculated setup. The messages were designed to provoke doubt, jealousy, and resentment in Tony. Bailey was allegedly claiming that Justin was leading a double life, cheating, lying, and that she was the real victim. But the messages lacked substance, no evidence, no specific details. They relied solely on emotion. One detail stood out. The phrasing was too polished. The texts read like rehearsed scripts, not raw personal pain. This raised a new possibility. Either someone else had written the messages, or Bailey wasn't acting alone. Cell carrier data revealed that during the texting, Bailey's phone had connected to a public Wi-Fi network at a bar in Murrieta. Investigators quickly obtained the bar's surveillance footage. The video showed a woman resembling Bailey sitting in a back corner, typing on her phone. Next to her was a man who occasionally leaned over, spoke to her, pointed at the screen, and then stepped away. They couldn't identify the man. Video quality was poor, and his face was only partially visible. But police took note. Bailey hadn't been acting entirely alone. Who the man was, however, remained unclear. Later, investigators discovered something critical. The message Tony had received on the morning of June 21st from Justin's phone wasn't sent by Justin. By that time, Justin had already lost his life. His phone was in Bailey Sharp's possession. It was a chilling realization. Bailey had deliberately sent that message to buy time, to keep Tony from panicking, to make it seem like Justin had simply left on his own. The idea was to lull her into waiting, preventing her from contacting authorities too soon. It was part of a calculated plan to delay discovery of the crime and keep law enforcement off their trail. The suspect's fatal misstep was underestimating how easily digital activity can be tracked today. Message structures, network entry points, phone movements, it all pointed to a coordinated effort. Bailey's behavior raised even more suspicion. One day after Justin's disappearance, she powered down her phone and vanished. This didn't look like panic. It looked premeditated. Once police began actively searching for Bailey Sharp, they couldn't pinpoint her whereabouts. Her phone was off, and there was no messenger activity. The only lead came from pharmacy surveillance footage in Paris. On the evening of June 22nd, roughly 24 hours after Justin's body was found, Bailey was caught on camera. She was alone, wearing a medical mask and hooded sweatshirt. She bought pain relievers and bottled water. At checkout, she showed an ID under someone else's name. The clerk didn't recall details, but cameras caught everything. Then she disappeared again. She was officially declared a wanted person. The alert was distributed across local law enforcement agencies. Her photo, aliases, descriptions, and known connections were entered into the system. Investigators reasoned, if she was just a witness, she wouldn't be hiding. The disappearance made her a suspect. But still, there was no hard proof. No one had offered definitive testimony tying her directly to the crime. The case was built on circumstantial evidence, coincidences, odd messages, and her sudden disappearance. Police shifted focus to Bailey's network, who she might have contacted or stayed with. Her social media turned up nothing. Accounts were inactive, with no recent activity. She had no known relatives in California. Her parents lived in Seattle and had lost contact with her long before she moved. According to her mother, they hadn't spoken in years. Bailey had disappeared from their lives long ago. Police started to notice a pattern. In recent weeks, Bailey had been seen multiple times in the same area, southern Riverside, near a remote residential complex. Surveillance cameras in the area picked up footage of her vehicle, and later, a different car registered under a man's name. That name wasn't disclosed at the time. It was becoming more and more clear. Either Bailey knew she was being sought, or someone was helping her stay hidden. Given her lack of stable income, housing, or identification, investigators leaned toward the latter. It was unlikely she'd managed to go underground alone. Someone was sheltering her, or even traveling with her. But a bigger question remained. If Bailey was just the bait, then who was actually behind this entire case? Who planned it all? The answer began to emerge on the morning of June 24th, when the Department of Motor Vehicles responded. The second vehicle frequently seen near Bailey had been registered to Jared Bishoff. That name had already appeared in the case files. Jared was the ex-husband of Tony Rep, the woman who lived with Justin Hilbert. Until then, police had no reason to connect him directly to Justin's disappearance. But now, his vehicle had been spotted near where the main suspect was hiding. Investigators began digging into Jared's background. He was a former Marine with several years of service, later working in warehouses, and occasionally in private security. In the past year, he hadn't held a steady job. After his divorce from Tony, he stayed briefly with relatives before moving out. According to Tony's close friends, communication between the two had stopped after repeated arguments, controlling behavior, and emotional tension. Tony believed he was dangerous. There were no police reports filed against him, but investigators learned Tony had once discussed installing a security system because she feared her ex. After they split, Jared seemed to fall off the radar. No one could say for sure where he was living or who he was spending time with. Not until Bailey Sharp re-entered the picture. Phone data revealed that Bailey had been frequenting southern Riverside for several weeks leading up to the incident. Surveillance from that area captured her with a man. His partially visible face bore a strong resemblance to Jared Bishoff. The information was soon confirmed. Location data from both Bailey's and Jared's devices placed them in the same areas at the same times. And on the night Justin disappeared, both phones pinged in the same part of Riverside where his body was later discovered. Police secured a warrant to search the apartment Jared appeared to be using based on mobile activity. The unit was rented under a false name. Inside, the scene was chaotic. Leftover food, Bailey's clothing, a backpack, and a knife wrapped in a t-shirt. The blade tested positive for traces of blood. Forensics later confirmed the blood belonged to Justin Hilbert. Jared, however, was no longer there. Neighbors said they had seen him shortly before the incident, sometimes alone, sometimes with a woman resembling Bailey. After that, both vanished. Authorities in Riverside County now had warrants out for both suspects. The search expanded to include banks, phone carriers, and traffic cameras. Investigators circled back to the bar in Murrieta, where Bailey had often been seen. A bartender named Ricky remembered her clearly. She had been there with a man, tall, upright posture, quiet. At the time, he hadn't known the man's name. But when shown a photo of Jared, he immediately recognized him. Ricky recalled that they often whispered about someone getting in the way, and seemed extremely cautious. That's when Ricky recalled overhearing fragments of a conversation. Phrases like, "She ruined everything," and "He won't be around much longer." It revealed a motive. Jared wanted Justin out of the picture to regain control over Tony. The original target may have even been Tony, but Justin's involvement became the trigger. Through Bailey, Jared orchestrated a setup. She sent Tony misleading messages claiming infidelity. The goal was to stir doubt, create conflict, and possibly drive Justin away. On the evening of June 20th, Justin left the house after receiving those texts from Bailey. She had arranged a meeting claiming she would expose who was behind everything. Justin went out to confront the situation, unaware he was walking into a trap. No one would see him alive again. A few days later, investigators located Justin's car. The sedan had been abandoned on a roadside in a remote area with no homes or cameras nearby. Inside, there were bloodstains on the seat. Outside, a partial fingerprint. Lab analysis linked it to Danny Serrano, a man with prior convictions for assault and theft. At that time, he was already in custody on an unrelated charge. It was confirmed that during Justin's disappearance, Danny had still been free. Investigators interviewed him at the detention center. Danny denied involvement, but gave inconsistent statements. Now, police had his photo. They brought the photo to bartender Ricky. When shown Danny's image, Ricky recognized him immediately. He recalled seeing Bailey with another man. Nervous, edgy. That was Danny. He hadn't been drinking much, changed clothes in the restroom and threw something in the trash. As he left, he told Ricky, "You didn't see anything. That's why you're still breathing." At the time, Ricky took it as a joke. Now it was clear. He had encountered someone tied to the case. Ricky's account reinforced investigators' suspicions. A third person had been involved. Justin's phone was later discovered in a dumpster near where the car had been found. The device was damaged, but forensic specialists recovered the call logs and text history. It confirmed that in the final hours before his death, Justin had received texts from Bailey's number, and then a phone call, which prompted him to leave home. Meanwhile, a small motel in Arizona caught investigators' attention. In early July, a man and woman matching Jared and Bailey's descriptions had stayed there. The manager recalled they were quiet, paid in cash, and asked not to be disturbed. Then, on July 23rd, in the desert near an abandoned hangar, the body of a woman was found. It was Bailey Sharp. The cause of death: multiple stab wounds. No belongings, ID, or phone were found with her. After their stay, the motel's shower had been scrubbed thoroughly. Micro traces of blood were found in the drain. Fingerprints belonging to Jared were discovered on a plastic bag found near the dump site where Bailey's body had been concealed. Police were now certain. Jared had eliminated a partner who could have turned on him. He became the sole person wanted in connection with both crimes. On July 27th, a tip came from a roadside diner in Arizona. A man resembling Jared had eaten alone and paid in cash. Surveillance confirmed it was Bishoff. Then, on July 30th in New Mexico, a patrol unit stopped a car with a broken tail light. The driver was visibly nervous and had fake ID. Fingerprints confirmed it was Jared Bishoff. He was arrested. On him, only cash, forged documents, and a backpack with clothes. He remained calm, stayed silent during questioning. But the evidence was overwhelming. Blood traces matching Bailey were found in the motel. The apartment held the knife with Justin's blood. Experts confirmed the blood on the knife matched blood found inside Justin's car where the crime had occurred. Moreover, Jared's DNA was found on the steering wheel and driver's seat. It was clear he had driven the car after the incident. What sealed the case was Danny Serrano's confession. During a second interview, fearing a life sentence, he agreed to cooperate. He revealed that Jared had been the one to use the knife and fire the fatal shot. Danny admitted he had helped restrain Justin and later helped dispose of the body. His story matched digital evidence and physical findings. Investigators compiled extensive digital evidence, geolocation data, message history, and communication patterns. Forensic linguists determined that some of the messages sent to Tony from Bailey's number were, in fact, written by a man. This confirmed what the data had already begun to show. Jared and Bailey had acted in coordination, and Jared was the mastermind and direct perpetrator behind the main crime. In the spring of 2017, the trial began. The charges: first-degree murder of Justin Hilbert, the death of Bailey Sharp, conspiracy and destruction of evidence. The jury found Bischoff guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to 2 life terms without the possibility of parole. His attorney declined to file an appeal. Based on the collected evidence, the district attorney's office also charged Danny Serrano with aiding and abetting in a first-degree crime and obstruction of justice. His trial took place in the fall of 2017. The jury also found him guilty. The court considered mitigating factors, his substance issues, and the subordinate role he played, and sentenced him to 25 years with no possibility of parole during the first 20 years. According to one of Jared's former military colleagues, long before the crime occurred, Jared had spoken bitterly about Tony, saying she had ruined his life and taken everything from him. He viewed her as his possession, and her new partner as a threat to his control. What happened to Justin wasn't just an act of revenge. It was Jared's way of emotionally breaking Tony. He wanted her to suffer, to be left alone, raising her son, and to live each day haunted by what had happened. Initially, Jared had planned to target both Justin and Tony, but according to Danny, Jared altered the plan. He allegedly said that physical death was too quick, that real suffering would come from being left behind. If she stays alive, he said, she'll suffer for the rest of her life. Jared believed Tony's deepest pain would come from losing the person she loved, living in fear and isolation, and having to look her son in the eye every day, knowing what happened to his father. That's why the victim was Justin. This wasn't just a violent act, it was psychological torment carried out with chilling precision. Thus ended an investigation that had lasted nearly a year, one of the most complex and disturbing cases in Riverside County's recent history. A story that began with a body on the side of a road concluded with 3 lives destroyed, 2 deaths, and 2 convictions. For Justin's family, it wasn't a victory, but it was justice. Thanks for watching, everyone. Your support means a lot to me, and you can help my channel grow by hitting that like button, dropping a comment, and sharing this video. Your engagement really makes a difference. See you soon.